Hey friends, welcome to CnC DIY Factory. I'm Cindy, my husband is Chris. We are a husband and wife team who loves to take ordinary items and turn them into amazing home decor. Here on our channel, we share tips, techniques, and inspiration, as well as our DIY kits and our unfinished wood products to help you create unique decor for your home or to give as gifts. All of our products can be found on our website at cncdiyfactory.com, and it will be linked in the description box below. Today we are diving into some bewitching, spooky decor with crows, witches, and just the right touch of Halloween magic. Whether you're a seasoned DIYer or just starting out, these projects are fun, customizable, and perfect for adding that spooky charm to your space. Let's get started. In this project, I'm using our medium-size unfinished wood tag. I want this tag to have a chippy and crackled effect, and my favorite way to achieve this is with milk paint. I have found that when I put down a barrier between the milk paint and the raw wood, I will have better results. So I will start with staining the tag with Minwax water-based stain in Legacy Brown, and I'm staining the back and the sides and just the front edge of the front of the tag. I'm going to combine the Sweet Pickins milk paint in the colors Suitcase and Lantern. The Suitcase is a beautiful brown and the Lantern is a very dark black. I want a darker brown, so I am mixing in just a small amount of the Lantern to darken it up. Milk paint is a 1-to-1 ratio of paint powder and water, and it needs to be mixed very well, and then I set it aside for about 10 minutes to thicken up. While I wait for the milk paint, I am going to paint the front of the tag with the DIY vintage linen. I'm not too concerned about the coverage and painting all the way to the edge of the tag because I want a weathered or distressed look to this tag. I have a piece of Roycycled Treasures decoupage paper left over from Sonnet's Vintage Soul Creative Retreat that she held last year, so I'm just sizing it up and trimming it to fit. I'll be using the DIY liquid patina to decoupage this paper to the front of the tag. I line up the paper where I want it and I lay down an even layer of the liquid patina, then I spritz my paper to relax the fibers and smooth it out with my paintbrush. I'll work in sections following these same steps and smoothing out the paper as I go. This is my preferred method to ensure that I don't have any wrinkles in my paper. Once the paper is completely dry, I will use my finger sander to sand off the excess paper. If you don't have a finger sander, this is a game changer for removing the excess paper and sanding your projects. I'll have a link in the description box below if you want to add this to your crafting tools. The milk paint has been sitting and it is ready to use. Now I did not add as much water to the paint because I wanted a really thick consistency. But if this is too thick for you, you can always add a little more water to thin it down to your liking. I'm only applying one coat of the milk paint because it is so thick, and then I'll use my heat gun to quickly dry the paint, trying to force the crackle and crazing that I want. The paint crackled beautifully, but it is hard to see on camera, so you'll be able to see it when I put a finish on it. Next, I'm using the Essential Stencil stencil called Halloween Vintage Frame, and this has 3 different silhouettes in the set. I'm using the crow, and I'll be stenciling this onto the front of the tag. I'm using Fusion Mineral paint in coal black to lay down the first coat of paint on this stencil. Then I'll go back over this with the Master's Touch heavy-bodied acrylic paint in pearlized carbon black for a bit of a bluish shimmer to the crow. To give the tag a bit more interest, I'm using the Essential Stencil stencil called Elegant Damask Trio, along with the pearlized carbon black paint. I want to have this design coming off the edge of the tag in just a few places, and I love how this adds just a bit of that something something. Well, this is a blast from my past. I have had these Making Memories rub-on transfers in my craft supplies since the early 2000s when my kids were still little and I was deep into the scrapbooking craze. I don't know if these are available, but I have been going through my stash and trying to use up what I have. If you don't have these or something similar, you could use the IOD apothecary stamps for any typography you would want to add. Once I finished adding the rub-on transfers, I'm going to seal everything in with the DIY clear wax, and then I'm going to follow that up with the Howard's Chalk Teak Wax in dark. This is where you will be able to see the crackle and crazing of the milk paint in the back and sides of the tag. To finish this off, I made a messy bow out of some ribbons from my crafting supplies, and I'm tying it onto the tag. I didn't record myself making the bow, but you simply take strips of ribbon or fabric and lay them out in a crisscross fashion, and then you secure them in the center. I'm using another piece of ribbon to attach the bow to the tag, and this project is done. I would love to know what saying you would use on this tag, or if you would put a bow on it. In this project, I am using our wood faux book. This is handcrafted by Chris with special attention to the details from a solid wood board, which makes it perfect for staining, painting, and decoupaging. I will be staining everything but the front and the pages with the Minwax water-based stain in Legacy Brown, Vintage Orange, and True Black. I want this to look like worn leather, so I will use a blending process alternating between the stain and a spritz of water to help the stain glide and to blend. To add age, I will use the True Black around the edges of the book and gently blend it in. For the pages, I am using DIY Fire Starter. It is a bright, vibrant orange, and I'm painting 2 coats for full coverage. I could have used an off-white or a lighter color for the edges of the pages, but for the look I want, I need the base to be bright. For the front of the book, I am using DIY Vintage Linen. I'm going to be decoupaging on the front, and I want to ensure that the colors of my paper are true and they pop. This rice paper is from last year's October's Sonnets Maker's Box. I believe it is called Witching Hour, and it was hand-drawn and painted by Connie at The Painted Photographer as an exclusive paper for the Maker's Box. As a perk to being a subscriber to the Maker's Box, we get to order additional papers, and I happen to have an extra one and thought it fits perfectly on the cover of our book. I am using the Fusion Decoupage and Transfer Gel to adhere the paper to the cover. I like the thickness of the gel when decoupaging rice paper, and I feel I don't always need to spritz the paper with water. But in order to get the paper to easily bend into the binding of the spine, the water helps to relax the fibers of the rice paper, and it easily folds into the crease. Once the rice paper is completely dry, I will take a sharp crafting blade and slice down the crease in the binding to release the extra rice paper. Then I'll use my finger sander and sand off the excess paper around the cover of the book. Then I will apply an additional coat of the Fusion Decoupage and Transfer Gel to seal the paper. I love to use stencils, and Chalk Couture has some mesh stencils that are fun to use. This one is from a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure if they have it in stock anymore. I'm using their black chalk paste and a silicone squeegee to push the paste through the stencil. Now, while the paste is still wet, I will add some black fine glitter to give it a bit of glam. This will need to dry completely. I let mine dry overnight so that the glitter doesn't brush off. I am using the DIY Golden Ticket liquid patina to give the pages a beautiful golden patina. When using a brighter color such as orange for fall or red for the holidays, it creates this richer, deeper gold. Going back into my crafting stash, I found these gold rub-on transfer letters from the Dollar Tree. Now they are easy to use, but I suggest you add a top coat as soon as you have them adhered to your project, because they rub on easily and they rub off easily too. The quality is definitely not the same as the IOD rub-on transfers, but I think that they turned out pretty good in the end. To seal this book, I am using the DIY clear wax, and then I will go over top of that with the Howard's Chalk Teak Wax in dark. Then I'll buff off the excess to give this book that perfect vintage vibe. I love how this project turned out, and I think it is the perfect addition to any spooky Halloween decor. I would love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Now this project is probably my favorite project for the spooky season ever. I am using an empty amaretto bottle with the lid, but this can be done with any type of bottle you may have. I want lots of texture on this to create an ancient, spooky looking bottle that would be used for a witch's spell. Now to get that look, I'm using salt wash mixed with fusion mineral paint in cast iron. I want the consistency to be something close to brownie batter, really thick. I will use an old 1-inch chip brush to pounce and stipple the paint mixture onto the bottle, covering everything including the cap, and then I will have this dried completely before moving on. Just look at all of that texture. It looks like it was just dug out of the swamp. Next, I will use the same chip brush with the black salt wash still in it, I haven't washed it, and I will stipple the fusion mineral paint in Woodwick over top of the black to create the depth that I need. Wow, this is already looking so creepy and so good. I am going to use the Essential Stencil Transfer Set Vintage Apothecary labels that just came out this year. I have 2 sets of them, so I am going to choose the same label from both sets and put one on each side of the bottle. If you do not have transfers like this, you can use like Roycycled Treasure's Halloween masterboard or her label masterboard or a napkin, or you could even print your own label and apply it to the bottle. Be sure when you are applying any transfer to this type of a bottle that the paint and salt wash are thoroughly dry. I would let it sit overnight to make sure that it's completely dry. Otherwise, you run the risk of pulling up the paint and salt wash with your transfer. Oh, I absolutely love this, and you can absolutely stop right here if you want to and seal it up, but I'm going to keep going. When Joann's closed their store here in Kansas City, I bought all of the Tim Holtz distress sprays that they had at a discount, and I'm going to use some of them on this bottle. I'm starting with the Distress Oxide spray in Spiced Marmalade, and I will dry each spray before adding another color so that the sprays do not blend together and you can see each color individually. The next color I used is the Distress Spray Stain in Salvaged Patina. Then I will dry that. The next one is Distress Spray Stain in Gathered Twigs, followed by the Distress Spray Stain in Hickory Smoke. These sprays will need to be sealed with at least 2 coats of a spray-on clear sealer. I used Rust-Oleum 2X. Otherwise, they will come off on your fingers and can be smudged. But wait, I'm not done. I am turning to the Pentart Moss Effect paste in both the dark green and the light green. I love using these pastes. You simply apply the paste where you think moss will grow, and then you use your heat gun to puff them up to be 3-dimensional. I like to layer my dark green first and then the light green color over the top for a more authentic look. Once I have applied the Moss Effect pastes and everything has had time to cool down and dry thoroughly, I will take this outside and give the entire bottle 2 coats of the Rust-Oleum 2X Clear Spray Sealer in the matte finish. Now I think I'm going to keep this one, but I know that I am going to make a whole bunch more of these bottles. I absolutely love how this turned out. Let me know what you think in the comments. For this project, I am using one of our CnC DIY Factory original design medium arched frame with kickstand DIY kits. This kit comes with instructions on how to assemble the frame and is the perfect size to fit on a bookshelf or a side table. I will start by painting 1 coat of the DIY paint in layered chocolate on the back of the frame, both of the arches, and the kickstand assembly. Then I will dry everything before moving on to the next step. You can see when the DIY paint is dry because it dries to a lighter color. Now it will darken up again when it is sealed. Now off camera, I painted the front of the backer board for the frame with the DIY vintage linen. I have this beautiful rice paper from Decoupage Central. I got it last year. I think it's still in stock this year. It is an A4 size and the number is DC440 if you want to reach out to a stockist to get one for yourself. You can see the size of this paper fits perfectly in this frame. I just had to trim down the excess around the edges. I'm using the Fusion Decoupage and Transfer Gel to apply this rice paper. I like the thickness of the gel, and on a flat surface, I find that I do not need to spritz my rice paper with water before adhering. To assemble the frame, I like to use the Tight Bond Quick and Thick, along with the Stick Fast CA glue in the thick formula. I assemble 1 layer at a time, allowing the CA glue to hold fast while the Tight Bond has time to dry. After I have glued the arches to the backer board, I will also glue the kickstand base to the backer board. Then I will take my finger sander with a 220 grit sandpaper and give the entire piece a good sanding to smooth the paint and to add some distressing along the edges. To add a little more character to the frame, I am using the DIY paint in Summer Crush and a rounded stencil brush to dry brush some color in the corners and along the edges of the arches. I really like the effect that this brings. Now before I assemble the kickstand to the back of the frame, I will seal the back of the frame and each piece of the kickstand, both sides of the kickstand. Once the kickstand is assembled, it's very difficult to get to the underside of that kickstand to seal it. And I am using the DIY clear wax to seal the DIY paint. If I'm using wax to seal the paint, I will not add the wax to the hinges or inside of the slots on the base plate so that the Tight Bond and the CA glue can adhere properly. Once the kickstand assembly is adhered to the back of the frame, I will go back with the wax and seal the hinges. On the front side of the frame, I will also use the DIY clear wax to seal the paint and then go over the rice paper. Then I will add the DIY Decrepit dust in Warm, which is a beautiful cinnamon colored dust, and it's perfect for adding warmth or to create the illusion of rust to a project. I'll use a small paintbrush to add the dust to the corners and sides of the frame, as well as to some of the areas of the pumpkin. The decrepit dust melts into the wax, and once the wax has cured, it becomes permanent. Once I have the dust in all of the places, this piece is done. I would love to know what you think of this project. I think it turned out beautifully. Please let me know if I have shared any tips or techniques that you might try on your next project. Let's take one last look at all of the projects together. Tell me which one was your favorite, and if you are inspired to try any of these projects that I have shared with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like my content, please hit that like button, smash that subscription bell, leave me a comment, and share this with a friend that might like this as well. Until next time, keep practicing random acts of crafting. Bye for now.